Have you watched the Bears tape, and do you have thoughts on the Bears route concepts and what they were trying to get done? Because we'll talk Caleb, but we were talking a lot about the offense and trying to figure out what Shane Waldron is doing.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't one of those games where things continually jumped out at me on why are they doing that? What are they doing in terms of route concepts? So that was not one of the thoughts when I was watching the Bears.
Going into this game, Kurt, I thought it was interesting considering what Indianapolis's defense was built up like, that it seemed like the type of game where perhaps the Bears could get downhill and really establish the run game. On teams that you've been on, and you've been on a part of some teams that do throw the ball around, when you knew you had an opponent that wasn't as strong in the run game, what became important the week of and inside of the game to remember?
Well, I mean, obviously, like you said, I was on a lot of teams that were kind of pass first teams, but we also felt, especially when I was in St. Louis, that we had the ability to run the football if our opponent was weak in that area. I mean, I remember some of the times the greatest show on turf, we'd run for 200 yards a game. So we had the capabilities of doing that. I think the biggest thing was just trying to figure out where the mismatches were. And just because a defense doesn't look good on tape or hasn't played well, doesn't mean it's an automatic mismatch for every single team in terms of the run game or whatever facet that is. And so I think the whole key offensively, no matter who you are, no matter who you're playing, is what are our strengths and what strengths can we accentuate this week against that opponent to try to have success. And I think the natural thing is always to look at the stats and go, oh, this team can't stop the run. We better be able to run the football. Well, that still might not be our strength. When I was in Arizona, we never ran the football very well. And so, we could go into games going, well, maybe we can run it better this week. And then we'd realize that's not our strength and we'd have to go back to doing what we do. And so I think we always have to caution ourselves on just saying, hey, this team can't stop tight end, so we should throw it to our tight end every time. Or, this team's not good in pass coverage, so we're going to throw it 50 times. I think the bottom line is you got to figure out your identity, what you're good at, and continue to get better at that so it doesn't matter who you play, that you can win with your strength. And then obviously you want to get to the point where you can win away from your strength and be good enough in that arena as well. But not every team is there.
They ran 84 plays. It's a lot of plays, the most they've run in any game since 1999. In fact, they did run it, to your point, 28 times for 63 yards. So maybe not good at it, even though the Colts are so bad at defending it. Well, let's ask you then what you saw. As you watched, what did you make of this Bears offense? And do you think it took a step forward or not overall?
I actually don't think they took a step forward. I was really hoping, you guys played the clip from our show yesterday when I was having that conversation with Caleb have his breakout game. I didn't think he was ready for that, but I really liked his progress from week 1 to week 2. Week 1, you guys watched the game. He just missed a lot of open receivers. He didn't look comfortable in the pocket. He struggled to just throw the football. And we went back and looked at the stats. And in the first game, he had 12 attempts to receivers that had 3+ yards of separation. So in other words, pretty wide open in the NFL the first week. And he was about 50-50 on those throws. Second week, he had 17 attempts. I mean, that's almost hard to believe that he had 17 attempts at guys that were 3 yards or more, open in the NFL. He was 17 for 17 in week 2 on those throws. So coming back, guys open, he's looking at the guy, he makes those throws. So I was really hoping to see progress yesterday. And I felt like he took a step back or he wasn't the same guy. And again, step back is a tough term because, was week 2, hey, the first guy I looked at was open. All I got to do is throw it to him and complete it. Whereas yesterday, I really thought he struggled to see the field and do some of the little things that I want to see him do at this level. I don't know if I expect him to be, I don't expect him to be a finished product at this point. But there's certain things, and just one example is, they were down and they were throwing a go route down towards the goal line. And Caleb came out and they have what we call middle close defense, so one safety in the middle of the field. And so to me, football 101, I've got a son that plays in college, and when I taught him to play when he was in 7th or 8th grade, really taught him how to read. If I'm throwing a go route on the outside and I've got one safety in the middle of the field, your primary job as a quarterback is to look at that safety or look that safety off or make sure that safety can't work towards that go route. You can't just turn and stare down the go route. So he ran one go route, in the game, and he just turned straight to his left-hand side and then waited and then threw the go route, and the safety got involved in the play at the goal line and what have you. And so it's little things like that it's like, I know Caleb Williams knows that. Like, he's thrown a million go routes, and he knows he's got to hold the safety. But it's those kinds of things that he's not doing that continually makes me think he's uncomfortable. He doesn't really feel good with what they're doing or confident in what he's seeing and how he's supposed to do it. And so the little things aren't even there right now. And then, and then it leads to, as you guys continue to see, these throws that he makes where you just have to shake your head. Like, you just can't throw it up. Like, you just can't do some of that stuff. And so, unfortunately, I wasn't as pleased with week 3 as I was with week 2.
Interesting. The first interception where he's reading across the field, trying to follow his eyes. It's at least 3. It might even be the 4th read that DeAndre Carter on the near sideline. What did you make of that as he was looking seemingly through progressions, Kurt?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I watch him play, he's obviously much better when wherever his eyes go first, he throws it. And so, whatever the reasoning behind it, we've talked a lot about the pure progression, whether his read starts there because of the coverage, whatever he does, if he looks at the guy and he throws to his first guy, he's been all right. The problem becomes having a plan beyond number 1. And really understanding what you're seeing and why you're moving on. And then when you move on, what am I looking for to make the decision that I want to make? And so, that interception and some of the other plays in the game, it really just looks like once he gets beyond number 1 right now, that, again, he's not quite sure the plan or the process that he wants to have, where he wants to put his eyes, and what exactly he's seeing that leads him to the next throw. It almost feels like, okay, I know where number 1 is. I'm confident with where I want to start my eyes. But then when they take that away, where do I want to go? And he hasn't quite, worked to that comfort level of moving beyond that and processing where he wants to go, where his feet need to go, where his eyes need to go. And that's led to a number of these bad decisions that have come later in the down. It's not like he's dropping back and just winging the ball into coverage. He looks, but then when he doesn't have something, that's when a lot of the bad decisions are being made.
Our segment with Kurt Warner is sponsored by Busey Bank, building business, growing wealth since 1868. Kurt, we've spent a lot of time talking about the 4th and goal play from the 1, the speed option that the Bears ran. How did you see that? And because it looked like that's the type of play that maybe a veteran quarterback gets you out of, because it looked like he was overloaded on the side that they ran it to.
I think we always have to be careful with this idea of quarterbacks should always get us out of the problems. Quarterbacks should solve everything. You talk about my tweets. When I get into watching film, I'm tweeting all the time. Things that crop into my head and things that frustrate me and what's going on. And so, I talked about that, earlier in the week because, we were talking about, having a plan and seeing certain things. And the natural response for everybody is, well, why doesn't the quarterback just change the protection? Why doesn't the quarterback just change the play to something that's better? And it's not always that easy. Like, you got a lot of things that are going on. You got a time clock, when you get the play in. And maybe you didn't even talk about, hey, this is something we can check out of. I mean, we're in the red zone. Very seldom do you check out of things in the tight red zone, especially if it's a special play, because you don't have necessarily anything else that's coming off of that formation or that particular look. And so that's the natural thing. Everybody says, well, why wouldn't he check out of it? A veteran might have checked out of it. That doesn't normally happen down that tight. And like I said, especially on those special plays. I'm never a big fan of, those specials in critical situations. Because to me, the specials are either, oh my gosh, you're the best play designer ever because they didn't have any idea and you walk in for a touchdown, or they get blown up and they just look terrible because, it's really about fooling them and catching them in a situation that, that they're not ready for, as opposed to going, hey, this is our best play. We're running behind our best players, or we're throwing the ball to our best player, and we're going to hang our hat on that when we get down tight in a critical situation. So I'm sure that was one of those plays. Hey, this is our special. You don't have a chance to really check out of it. We're going to run it. We think we're going to get the right defense, and we're going to walk in for a touchdown. And then it just didn't work.
Yeah, Caleb said that by the time they got to the line, it was down to 10 seconds. Because it seemed like a lot of calls are coming in a little bit late as well. We're frustrated by the entire machinery of the whole thing, Kurt. And it's such familiar territory of trying to figure out how much is the quarterback, how much is the offensive coordinator. And if it is the offensive coordinator, then why did the coach hire him? And if it is the coach that hired him, then why did the GM bring the coach back? It's like it's such a convoluted place, and it's. Can you help us think about the offensive coordinator a little bit? Because this was a big moment for him to adjust and show some adjustments, and we don't feel like we saw it. So a lot of our collective ire is going to the offensive coordinator here after 3 weeks because it's been bad now for 3 different weeks.
Well, I just think you have to have patience with the whole process, is because it's, you can be really creative as a play caller or play designer, but if you don't have the pieces that are ready to be able to handle that, you can't do that either. You can't put a bunch on their plate if they're not ready to handle it. And, and then you just have to make sure that you understand the big picture and why things are happening, why they're doing what they're doing. And I've always been a firm believer that it takes about 12 months in an offense to really get the nuance of the offense down, where you talk about coming out of the huddle slow, where play calls just become natural. One of the things when you come into a new offense, and I always likened it to learning a new language, right? When you learn a new language and somebody says, hello in Spanish is hola. So when you hear that, or when somebody says that, the first thing that you do is you translate it back to your old language, and you go, oh, that means hello. It's not just natural where, oh, I hear hola and I know it's hello. The same thing happens in football, is that, still to this day, of all the offenses that I've been in, I speak the greatest show on turf language, right? We used to work the digit system. So it was, 585, F post swing, like that's still the language. So even if I look at a play, on tape, I automatically go back to, oh, what would that be in my language? And that language is, the Rams language, even though I didn't even play there last. My last time was in Arizona for 5 years in a completely different offense, but I naturally go back to that language. And so when somebody called a play into the huddle, is Caleb or whoever the players are they seeing it as, oh, when we say trips right, is trips right in this offense the same trips right that I ever had? Or is trips right in this offense trio in my old offense? And do I have to translate it? So instead of just being able to visualize the offense and react and play, you're thinking, okay, what is this? Okay, what that play call? Okay, that's this. And you got to get to the point where you can just react. And so I'm sure a big part of their offense right now is getting Caleb and whoever the other younger guys are in this offense comfortable with the terminology so they can just react and play. So now you've got to go, okay, if he's not fully comfortable with it, can I continue to add layers and creativity and new plays when he's not even comfortable with this language? And now all of a sudden it becomes overwhelming. Like you're learning a language and you go to that country and you try to hear people speak and you're like, well, if you talk really slow, I can pick up every word. But when you say it in a sentence, I'm completely lost. And so that to me is kind of my analogy for learning an offense, being able to execute an offense, me talking about Caleb being comfortable with number one. But then when I get beyond number one, I'm not quite as confident and comfortable. and I'm trying to get there, and it takes time to get there. And so it's, so hard to point the finger now after just 3 weeks together and say, well, it's the offensive coordinator, or it's Caleb, or he can't do it, or he's not very good. Give them some time to mesh together to where they feel comfortable, and then we can truly understand, is there an issue, or what the issue is, or will they work really, really well together?
You tweeted earlier in the week about national TV folks who seem to have a more efficient routine than you in terms of watching tape, because the way they talk about it on a Monday, they seem to have watched games and really can evaluate them. It's time that you keep going on this, Kurt. Football opinionating is a racket. Expose the scheme. Expose it, sir.
Well, I don't know if I want to expose it, but the thing that I always say is, like, I don't have a problem if you watch the TV game and you come on, TV the next day and say, hey, it really looked like Dallas couldn't stop the run. And so they've got to figure that out and figure out a way to stop the run. I have no problem with that if you haven't really dove into the tape and done anything. The ones I have a problem with is if anybody's out there making a point about, hey, Caleb Williams played awful yesterday, or Micah Parsons was terrible in the run game. It was all about him without watching the tape. So you're pointing out players and you're giving an assessment on players that people listen to and that people take home and that people talk about in the water cooler and that people develop opinions on these players. And so I just want to make sure that everybody out there is watching the tape before they do that on players, because too many people are listening because our game's great. And we got a lot of people out there talking, and we got a lot of great jobs. I got a great job because of it, but it shapes people's opinions about players. And so I want people to be careful about that. So that's the first part of it. And then the second part of it is, if they're actually watching tape and they're getting through it faster than I can and having a good assessment of what's going on, I want to know how they're doing it, because it takes me a long time to grind through the tape and really see what I want to see to develop the opinions that I have and the thoughts that I have. So that's the second part. That, hey, if there's anybody out there that's got a better means, I'm willing to listen.
Well, Kurt, we appreciate this for sure. How can we, as talk show hosts and your average fan, look at the game a little bit differently when they're watching in real time? Like, what are some suggestions that you'd have for us as novices on how to be a better football evaluator?
I will tell you not to do it off of a TV game. Because the bottom line is you don't know. Everything happens too fast. You don't get to see the whole picture. You can't, rewind back and see like I can with the all 22 to go, okay, his eyes were over here. What's the concept over here? You're not just looking at them show a replay of somebody open on the other side of the field and going, oh my gosh, why didn't he throw it to that guy? He's wide open, without knowing what's going on. Oh, the offensive line is terrible. Caleb got hit again. And now you go back and watch it and you go, oh, that was actually a hot situation. That one was on Caleb, not on the offensive line, or vice versa. The offensive line messed up the protection here. So we're saying Caleb should have thrown it hot, but it really should have been on the offensive line. And so unless you can watch the game that shows everything in this tight little box and follows the ball and truly understand the nature of what's going on, I think you have to watch TV games for entertainment. You watch TV games to cheer for your team and to enjoy the game and the spectacle and the amazing athletes that we have and that we get to watch. And you marvel at what they do. You don't shape opinions on even what a commentator says, because there's some commentators out there that I listen to and I go, nope, that's not what happened. That's not what's going on. But they think it is in the moment, just like a person watching the game thinks that happening in the moment. And that's why it's so important for me. I do very seldom do any, shows and talk about anything, until I get through the tape. And if I'm going on like with you guys, I make sure I watch the Chicago tape and I study it the way I want to study it. So when we talk, I've had seen what's going on and I've got an assessment on, on breaking it down. And so that to me is where it's really hard. I don't know if there is a good way based off of just watching on a Sunday afternoon to get a true feel for what's going on. So just reserve, your opinions, until either you get a chance to, to watch it deeper, if that's what you do, or you get a chance to listen to somebody who actually does watch it deeper and can help you, develop that opinion outside of, what you see in that little box.
That's a wonderful time for us to jump in and say goodbye and then ask for some phone calls from people who watch the game. Kurt, thanks, man. Appreciate
All right,
you,
guys.
Kurt.
Talk to you next week.